Jackson Merritt slammed the brakes so hard his car skidded across the gravel driveway, stopping inches from the stone steps of Merritt Estate. His chest heaved, breath sharp, as he stared ahead at the front doors where Sorrel Vanter stood, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but not a strand dared fall out of place. She looked like a statue that had come alive purely to judge him. "You're late," she said, each word slicing through the air. Jackson didn't answer. He stepped out of the car and slammed the door behind him, jaw tight. His mind had been spiraling for weeks. Meetings, board pressure, his father's old business partners breathing down his neck. But somehow, the thing that exhausted him most was this woman standing in front of him. The woman he was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. Inside the mansion, staff scattered like startled birds. No one wanted to be in Sorrel Vanter's path. She walked like someone who believed every room belonged to her. When her heels clicked, people moved. When she frowned, hearts raced. When she spoke, they apologized before she even finished her sentence. And then there was Alara Wynne. She stepped through the back entrance for her first day, clutching her small canvas bag and reminding herself to breathe. The mansion towered above her, windows like eyes, walls like a fortress. The kind of place that swallowed people whole. She had taken many jobs before. Cafes, cleaning companies, hotels, anything to help pay for her mother's medical bills. But nothing like this. Merritt Estate wasn't just a home, it was a universe. And she was just a speck inside it. The moment she entered the kitchen she could feel it, the tension thick enough to touch. No laughter. No chatter. Even the cooks sliced vegetables quietly. A trembling housekeeper hurried past her and whispered, "Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact with the fiancé. And whatever you do, never disagree with her." Alara nodded, her heart thudding. "Is she that bad?" The housekeeper gave a humorless laugh. "Worse." Alara had no idea then how deeply she would be pulled into this mansion's secrets. Or how she would become the one person brave enough to disrupt its balance. Hours later, she carried a tray of drinks toward the lounge where she'd been told the fiancé and staff were preparing for an afternoon meeting. Her steps were quiet, almost too quiet, as if the walls themselves were listening. Sorrel's voice echoed before Alara even reached the door. "No, no, no. I asked for white roses, not ivory. Does anyone here listen?" A vase shattered. Someone gasped. Alara stepped inside just in time to see a maid kneeling on the floor, hands shaking as she tried to pick up glass shards while Sorrel towered above her. The woman looked like she might cry. Sorrel's eyes snapped to Alara. "And who are you?" "Alara Wynne," she said softly. "The new maid." Sorrel's gaze swept over her like a laser scanning for flaws. "You're late." "I came through the back entrance, maybe I missed the—" "Excuses are useless," Sorrel interrupted. "Around here you adapt. Quickly." Alara lowered her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." She walked past Sorrel and set the tray on the table. But her hands trembled, not from fear but from something deeper. Something about the cruelty in the room made her chest tighten. Sorrel turned toward the maid still kneeling. "Leave. Clearly this job is too difficult for you." The girl scrambled to her feet and rushed out. Everyone avoided Sorrel's gaze. Everyone except Alara, who dared to look up for half a second. Their eyes met, Alara steady, Sorrel sharp, and for the first time, someone didn't flinch. It unsettled Sorrel more than she let show. Later that afternoon, Alara made her way down the hallway with a basket of linens. She paused outside the study when she heard a deep sigh, exhausted, frustrated, human. She peeked inside. Jackson sat at his desk, rubbing his temples. Papers piled around him like a fortress, his tie loosened as if he were suffocating. Alara hesitated, then knocked lightly. Sir? Is everything okay?" Jackson looked up, startled. He wasn't used to staff speaking first. But something about her voice, gentle, genuine, softened the rigidity in his shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alara," she said. "I'm new." He nodded slowly, studying her like she was the first new thing he'd seen in days. "Well, Alara, you picked an interesting week to start." "I can see that," she replied with a small smile. "Everyone seems tense." "That's one word for it," he said dryly. "Sorrel is preparing for the engagement gala. She wants everything perfect." "And you?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Do you want it?" Jackson blinked, taken aback. No one questioned him, not his board, not his staff, not even Sorrel. His lips parted as if he wanted to answer, but no sound came. Before he could speak, Sorrel's voice carried down the hallway. "Jackson? Where are you?" He exhaled sharply. "Duty calls." Alara stepped back to let him pass. But as he walked away, he glanced over his shoulder, just once, at the maid who had dared to ask the one question he had been silently drowning in. By the time evening approached, the mansion had shifted again. Lights dimmed, voices quiet, anticipation thick. Ilara moved through the hallways collecting towels, still getting used to the endless corridors. Then she turned a corner and froze. Sorel was whispering into her phone, voice low and venomous. "No, listen, once I marry him, the company access is guaranteed. His board won't question anything. I told you, this is our only chance to stabilize the Vanter portfolio." Ilara's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the linens. Sorel's voice turned colder. "Just stay quiet and let me handle him. Jackson is clueless. And once the merger is announced, his assets become ours." Ilara stepped back, one small step, but her shoe brushed the wall. Sorel spun around. "Who's there?" Ilara pressed herself against the shadows, heart hammering. She heard footsteps approach, slow, dangerous. She held her breath. Then a chef called from the kitchen, distracting Sorel for a split second. Sorel cursed under her breath and walked away. Ilara remained still long after she was gone. The truth she had overheard clung to her like ice. This wasn't just a cold fiancé. This was a woman planning something far darker. And Ilara Wynne, quiet, gentle Ilara, had just become the only person in the mansion who knew. Ilara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the tiny room assigned to staff, staring at the ceiling long after midnight, replaying Sorel's words over and over. The Vanda portfolio, access to assets, a merger. It was bigger than gossip. Bigger than drama. It was a trap Jackson Merritt didn't even know he was walking into. But who was she to interfere? She'd been hired less than a day ago. She didn't know Jackson. She didn't know the rules of this house. She didn't even know if she'd still have the job in the morning. Still, her chest ached with the weight of what she'd heard. When dawn broke, she dragged herself out of bed, dressed, and tied her hair back. The mansion was quiet in that soft, bluish hour, before the cooks began banging pans and Sorel began barking orders. Ilara walked toward the laundry room, desperate to keep her head down, to pretend she hadn't overheard anything. But as she rounded the corner, she collided straight into someone. A coffee mug fell. Papers scattered. A quiet curse slipped out. Jackson. He bent to pick up the mug, shaking droplets from his hand. "Sorry," he muttered, voice still thick with sleep. "No, I'm sorry," Ilara said quickly, kneeling to gather the papers. "I wasn't watching where I was." "It's fine." His tone softened when their eyes met. "Ilara, right?" "Yes, sir." "You can drop the sir. Just Jackson is fine." She blinked. Staff never called him by his name. Not unless Sorel was out of earshot. "You're up early," he said. "So are you." He gave a dry, humorless laugh. "I didn't sleep much." Ilara swallowed, wondering if she should say something, anything. But fear glued her tongue. Instead, she handed him the last sheet of paper. Jackson straightened, studying her for a long, quiet second. His eyes held exhaustion, but also a strange curiosity. "If you ever need anything," he said suddenly, "you can come to me." Ilara's chest tightened. He didn't know what those words meant. Not yet. Later in the day, preparations for the gala ramped up. Florists came and left in a hurry, staff rushed between rooms carrying trays and decorations, and Sorel ruled the mansion like a storm waiting to break. Ilara moved quickly, folding napkins, polishing glasses, replacing candles. Every time she entered a room, she felt eyes watching, Sorel's eyes. By noon, those eyes found her. Sorel stepped into the dining hall, heels echoing sharply. "You." Ilara froze mid-fold. "Yes, ma'am?" "Come with me." The command chilled her. Sorel led her to a private corridor, far from staff and noise. The second the door clicked shut, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Sorel stepped close. Too close. "Where were you last night around 7? Ilara's pulse spiked. "In the west hallway, preparing linens." "Were you?" Sorel's voice was soft but poisonous. "Or were you listening to conversations that weren't meant for you?" Ilara kept her expression blank. "I was working, ma'am." Sorel studied her carefully, eyes narrowing to slits. "Good. I would hate to imagine my staff being curious. Curiosity ruins people." The threat was unmistakable. Ilara lowered her gaze. "I understand." Sorel walked away slowly, heels clicking like a countdown. Ilara exhaled only when she was gone. By evening, the mansion glowed with lights. Staff rushed to finish last touches before Jackson and Sorel hosted key business partners. Ilara slipped into the hallway carrying a tray of appetizers when she heard familiar voices. Jackson's. And another man's, older, authoritative. Jackson, the marriage will stabilize the board, the man insisted. Sorrel's family brings legacy, power, influence. I know. Jackson sounded tired. But influence isn't everything. His companion scoffed. You're not a child anymore. This isn't about love. Elara paused, heart stinging at the word love. Jackson's voice dropped. Maybe it should be. The older man replied sharply. You don't have the luxury of fairy tales. Elara stepped back before she was seen, but her chest tightened. Jackson wasn't blind. He wasn't oblivious. He was trapped. And Sorrel knew it. Hours later, Elara stood in the hallway waiting for instructions when she felt a presence beside her. Jackson. He leaned against the wall, hidden from view of the party. You look like you're planning an escape, he murmured. Elara startled. Oh, I'm just waiting for Mrs. Lenton to send me with the next tray. I'm the one who should be escaping, he muttered. She gave him a small, empathetic smile. Long night. Long life, he corrected. Then he sighed. You ever feel like your future is being written for you? Elara swallowed. Every day. He turned his head, eyes locked onto hers. Then you know exactly how I feel. She opened her mouth, words burning to come out. Your fiancé is using you, you deserve better, you deserve happiness. But she couldn't. Not yet. One wrong word from her and she'd be gone. Not only fired, destroyed. Sorrel didn't strike her as someone who forgave. Suddenly Jackson straightened. Come with me. For a second. Elara blinked. Sir? I said call me Jackson. He walked down the quiet hallway, motioning for her to follow. Against her better judgment, she did. He stepped into the conservatory, a glass room filled with plants lit by moonlight. Outside, the gardens shimmered. Inside, everything felt still. Jackson spoke softly. Sometimes I hide here. Pretend the noise in that house doesn't exist. Elara looked around. It's beautiful. It used to be. His voice cracked slightly. Before everything became about deals, mergers, public image. Elara's throat tightened. She didn't know if it was the moonlight or the honesty in his voice, but she saw the real Jackson then, a man suffocating behind expectations. He looked at her gently. Too gently. You're different from the people in this house, he said. Elara forced herself to breathe. Is that a good thing? It's the first good thing I've had in a long time. Her stomach fluttered. She shouldn't feel this. She couldn't. But his words warmed her like sunlight finding a cold room. A voice sliced through the quiet. Jackson? Sorrel. Jackson stiffened. Elara's heart lurched. Sorrel appeared at the conservatory entrance, her gaze slicing through the air as it landed on Elara. What, she said slowly, exactly is happening here? Jackson stepped forward. Nothing. I was just talking to the help? Sorrel finished, venom dripping from her tone. How charming. Elara shrank back, gripping the tray to keep her hands steady. Sorrel's eyes locked onto her. You leave. Elara hesitated. Now. And Elara left. But not before she saw Jackson's jaw tighten, like he was holding back everything he wanted to say. As she walked away, she didn't realize that Sorrel wasn't just angry. She was suspicious. And Elara Wynne had just stepped directly into her line of fire. The next morning, Elara arrived at the mansion before dawn. The early hours were the only time the house felt less like a cage. She quietly carried linens down the long hallway, trying to steel herself for whatever Sorrel might throw at her that day. She had to be invisible. She had to be careful. But every nerve in her body screamed that the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Sorrel appeared in the corridor as she rounded a corner. Her eyes were sharp as blades, fixing Elara in place. You, Sorrel said. Her voice was soft, almost seductive, but deadly. I want the West Wing prepared for the gala inspection. And keep an eye on things. I won't tolerate incompetence again. Elara nodded, heart thudding. She could feel the unspoken threat. Watch your steps or you'll be gone. Of course, ma'am. As Sorrel walked away, Elara exhaled slowly, telling herself to focus. One wing at a time, one task at a time. That's all she could do. That's all she had ever done. Hours passed in a blur. The staff hustled, Sorrel hovered, and Jackson occasionally wandered through, distracted, distant, but somehow more human when she caught glimpses of him. Elara observed him quietly, noting the subtle lines of fatigue on his face, the weight he carried, the exhaustion of pretending nothing was wrong. By mid-afternoon, the mansion's tension had begun to mount. Sorrel had begun issuing impossible instructions. Elara delivered trays, straightened chairs, and carried bouquets from one room to another. She moved like a shadow, quiet, precise, but she couldn't ignore the words she had overheard the night before. Sorrel never loved him. It's all about the portfolio. Elara's mind raced. Could she confront him? Could she warn him? No, not yet. She had no proof. She had nothing but the voice she had heard. And Sorrel. Sorrel could destroy her in a heartbeat. Elara's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp click of heels. She turned to see Sorrel striding toward her, the glare fixed firmly on her face. Elara win, Sorrel said, stopping just short of her. Do you think you belong here? Elara's hands tightened around the tray she carried. I'm trying my best, ma'am. Sorrel laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Trying isn't enough. You're either perfect or you're gone. That's the rule here. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, Elara whispered. You will stay in line. And you will watch carefully. Especially the people you are meant to serve. Elara nodded, but inside, a spark had ignited. She would watch. She would see everything. And she would find a way to protect him. Later that evening, the mansion was alive with preparations for the gala. Crystal chandeliers reflected the flickering candlelight, silver trays gleamed in the hands of servers, and the scent of roses mingled with expensive perfumes. Elara moved quietly among the chaos, adjusting napkins and straightening glasses, when she noticed Jackson standing by the grand staircase, hands in his pockets, staring at nothing. She approached, cautious. Is everything all right, Jackson? He looked down at her, tired eyes softening for just a moment. I don't even know anymore, he murmured. Every decision I make seems wrong. And every smile I give feels false. Elara's heart ached. She wanted to reach out to tell him the truth, to warn him. But she didn't dare. Instead, she said, sometimes it helps to step back. To breathe. To see things clearly before you act. He nodded slowly as if clinging to her words. Maybe you're right. Just then Sorrel appeared, flaring like a storm. Jackson, there you are. The champagne glasses. They're all crooked. How do you expect me to host when the simplest things are ignored? He turned to her, tension coiling in his jaw. I wasn't aware. Of course you weren't, Sorrel snapped, cutting him off. Do not involve me in your excuses. Do what you are told. Elara watched the exchange, every fiber of her being aching. She wanted to step in to tell Jackson that he deserved better, that this wasn't right. But she remained silent, as invisible as the walls themselves. After the tension broke, she retreated to the side corridor, wiping her palms on her apron, trying to steady her racing heart. It was then she heard it, Sorrel's voice, low and dangerous, whispering on the phone. Yes. Once he signs the merger papers, everything will be mine. Don't worry about Jackson. He'll never see it coming. The board trusts me completely. Elara froze. Every word felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She had to do something. She couldn't let him be deceived, not now. Hours later, the gala began. Guests arrived in sparkling gowns and tailored suits. The chandeliers reflected like stars. Music filled the hall, but beneath the grandeur, Elara felt a storm brewing. Jackson moved through the crowd, his smile polished but strained. Sorrel trailed him, perfect in every way, radiating control. Guests whispered about her beauty, her power, and her dominance, but no one spoke of the cruelty hidden behind those eyes. Elara stayed near the edge, moving with trays and observing. She noticed the subtle ways Sorrel manipulated the room, the way she laughed at the wrong moments, leaned on Jackson possessively, ensured every interaction reinforced her control. Elara's heart raced. She couldn't stop watching. She couldn't look away. Finally, a quiet moment appeared. Jackson stepped onto the balcony, looking out over the gardens. Elara, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres, followed discreetly. Beautiful, isn't it? She said softly, not expecting an answer. He turned, startled. Oh, Elara. Yes. The gardens, they're alive. She smiled faintly. It's peaceful. You can think clearly here. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what I should do. I feel trapped. Elara took a deep breath. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She had to be careful. You're not alone, she said softly. Not everyone in that house wants to see you unhappy. He looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing her for the first time. I thank you for noticing. Before she could say more, Sorrel appeared at the balcony doorway, eyes blazing. Jackson. There you are. Don't disappear on me when our guests are here. Jackson tensed. Elara stepped back, invisible again. But Sorrel had noticed the quiet exchange. She narrowed her eyes at Elara, suspicion simmering. That subtle spark of recognition, of threat, was all Sorel needed. Ilara's mind raced. She had to find a way to warn him, to protect him. But she had no plan, no proof, only intuition, courage, and the truth she had overheard. And that night, as the gala ended and guests departed, Ilara realized that nothing in Maid Estate would ever be the same. She had stepped onto a battlefield where the stakes were higher than she had imagined. Sorel had noticed her. Jackson had trusted her, if only slightly. And the lines between loyalty, fear, and courage were about to collide. Ilara's heart pounded. She knew one thing for certain: the next move would be dangerous. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face it. The morning after the gala, the mansion seemed quieter, almost tense, as if it were holding its breath. Ilara moved through the hallways, carrying fresh linens, but she felt the weight of the previous night pressing down on her chest. She knew Sorel would be watching. She knew Jackson would be thinking. And she knew the moment had come to act, but carefully. By mid-morning, Sorel's cold eyes caught Ilara once again. She approached, her heels clicking like a warning. "Ilara, win," Sorel said softly, almost too softly. "I want everything prepared for the board meeting tomorrow. You will not fail me." "Yes, ma'am," Ilara replied, her voice steady despite the fear twisting her stomach. She knew this was the test. Every moment, every step, she had to be perfect, but also ready. As she walked away, her thoughts drifted to Jackson. He was too kind, too trusting. And Sorel. Sorel was dangerous, clever, and calculating. He didn't stand a chance alone. Ilara spent the afternoon carefully observing, noting Sorel's movements, overhearing snippets of conversations, watching the subtle manipulations she used on staff and on Jackson himself. Every word, every glance built the case in her mind. And by evening she had a plan. The mansion was dimly lit, with only a few lamps casting long shadows. Ilara found Jackson in the conservatory again, the same place where he had spoken to her days before. He looked worn, as if the weight of the world pressed on his shoulders, and she felt a pang of protectiveness so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. "Jackson," she began, voice trembling slightly, I need to tell you something. Something important." He looked up, his eyes weary but attentive. "What is it, Ilara?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Sorel, she's not what she seems. She doesn't love you. She's only after your assets. The portfolio. The company. Everything." He blinked, stunned. "What? How do you know this?" "I overheard her," Ilara said. "I wasn't supposed to, but I did. She's planning to use you. She's manipulating the board, the family, everyone. You need to see the truth before it's too late." Jackson's jaw tightened. I thought I knew her. I trusted her." Ilara stepped closer, speaking with urgency. "You can't trust her. Not now. Not ever. You have to act. Please. Don't let her control you." For a long moment, he said nothing, staring at her as if trying to read every word in her expression. Then slowly he nodded. "Thank you, Ilara. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to," she whispered. "Just be careful. That's enough." That night, while Sorel hosted a private dinner with key business associates, Jackson made his move. He requested a private meeting with the board, citing concerns about certain documents and plans. Sorel's confidence faltered slightly when he did, though she masked it with her usual icy smile. Ilara stayed in the shadows, watching the confrontation from a distance. She saw Jackson present the evidence she had helped him uncover, his voice steady but powerful. Sorel's expression tightened as the board members began questioning her intentions and scrutinizing her plans. "You've been misrepresenting your intentions, Sorel," one board member said sharply. "This isn't what was agreed upon." Sorel's composure cracked, if only slightly. Enough," Jackson said firmly, standing taller than he had in weeks. "I will not allow manipulation or deceit to guide the future of this company. The engagement is over." Ilara felt a thrill run through her. She had never seen Jackson this resolute. He was no longer the man suffocating under expectations. He was free. Sorel's lips pressed into a thin line. She tried to maintain control, but it was too late. The board had seen the truth. The facade had crumbled. The next day, Sorel packed her things, leaving the mansion with as much dignity as she could muster. She glared at Ilara once, a mixture of hatred and grudging respect in her eyes, before slipping out the door and leaving Jackson's life and Maid Estate forever changed. Ilara, meanwhile, felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. She had done what she came to do, but now her role in this mansion was uncertain. She had revealed the truth, protected Jackson, but she was still just a maid. Jackson found her in the hallway carrying fresh towels. "Ilara," he said softly, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Wait." She stopped, turning to face him. I can't thank you enough," he said. "Not just for what you did, but for being honest with me. You reminded me what it feels like to be seen, to be cared for." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. I didn't do it for that. I couldn't stand by and watch you be used." He stepped closer, his eyes warm, sincere. "Still you did. And I want you to stay. Not as a maid, not as someone who works in my house. But as someone I trust. Someone I want around." Her chest tightened. "Jackson. You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just stay." Ilara nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the turn of events. For the first time since arriving at Maid Estate, she felt safe. She felt valued. And she felt a spark, one she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Days later, the mansion was lighter. The oppressive tension that had hung over every hallway, every room, had lifted. Staff moved with ease, laughter returned to the kitchen, and Jackson finally allowed himself moments of genuine joy. Ilara moved through the halls, carrying trays, straightening curtains, but she did so with a sense of purpose. She had been the quiet observer, the unexpected protector. She had changed the course of a life, and in doing so had found her own strength. Jackson often found her in quiet moments, on the balcony, in the conservatory, or in the library. They would talk softly, laugh gently, and sometimes simply stand in comfortable silence. The connection between them deepened with each passing day, built not on fear, power, or manipulation, but on trust, honesty, and courage. One evening, as the sun set over the gardens, Jackson approached her with a small smile. "Ilara," he said, "I think this mansion finally feels like home." She looked around, the golden light painting the walls in warm hues, and then back at him. "Yes, it does," she whispered. And for the first time, both of them knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger, braver, and unafraid. Sorel Vanter was gone, Maid Estate was free, and in the quiet corners of the mansion, Ilara Wynne had found her place, not just as a maid, but as someone who had dared to stand, speak, and protect the truth. As the moon rose over the estate, the gardens glittering under its silver light, Ilara smiled. She had arrived as a maid, underestimated and unseen. But she had become the one person who mattered most when it counted, the unexpected guardian of the heart of Maid Estate. And in that moment she realized something else too. Sometimes the smallest, quietest actions could change everything. Hey family. If you enjoyed this emotional billionaire love story, don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss another heart-melting story just like this one. Trust me, the next one is even better. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from.